For the past several months, 12 News I-Team has been investigating Arizona's Empowerment Scholarship accounts. That program will now cost $1 billion a year for about 90,000 kids. The program has been hailed as a model for other states that also want to do the program. It was also sold as a way to get poor kids out of failing schools, but hasn't really done that. We take a look, and we hope you enjoy our series here on 12 Plus.
Here we go.
When former Governor Doug Ducey signed universal vouchers into law, he promised our kids will no longer be stuck in underperforming schools.
House Bill 2853. Now all Arizona children will have an opportunity at an excellent education. The sky's the limit. The law of the land. Thank you.
A promise he's since doubled down on.
These kids are trapped in failing public schools, and it's time to set these families free.
This spring, Ducey promoted Arizona's education experiment in Texas, where Texas Governor Greg Abbott was promoting that state's own voucher plan. The Texas plan, like Arizona's, offers any parent, regardless of income, to get a publicly funded voucher. A typical voucher in Arizona is between $7,000 to $8,000 for private school, homeschooling, or therapy. But are those kids leaving failing public schools? 12 News analyzed state and federal public records, finding 45% of all kids getting vouchers were never in public schools at all. That means taxpayers are now picking up the tab for kids they never had to pay for before the voucher expansion.
This is the privatization of education. So vouchers, are really setting up a whole new system of education that creates a two-tiered system for winners and losers.
That's Beth Lewis. She runs the 20,000-member Save Our Schools Arizona. The group advocates for more state spending in traditional public schools. Are families taking kids out of failing schools?
I don't want to say that that doesn't ever happen, but only 1% of Arizona's schools are rated F by the state's letter grading system. We know that most of the vouchers are going to rich kids.
Here's what state data shows. Thousands of kids are leaving some of the highest rated district and charter schools in Arizona. 12 News found the top 5 school districts losing kids who took vouchers are Mesa, Deer Valley, Chandler, Peoria, and Scottsdale. Their most recent letter grades, B, A, and A. Millions of dollars in public school funding leaves these schools along with those students. Then there's BASIS. During his 8 years as governor, Ducey routinely praised this charter operator. U.S. News & World Report regularly rates BASIS as having some of the best public schools in America. In fact, the BASIS Peoria campus last year was rated the #1 high school in the United States. Yet, over 400 BASIS kids left for vouchers. It looks like a lot of kids are actually leaving really high-performing schools and using the ESAs.
I think parents sometimes leave because they're sick of school districts where the school boards are dominated by left-wing people.
State Superintendent Tom Horn is a steadfast supporter of the voucher program.
You have a conservative community, but a very left-wing school board that emphasizes things like DEI, which I'm fighting now, critical race theory, transsexual things that people object to, boys and girls bathrooms and so on. And so I think that's a big explanation.
12 News attempted to reach Ducey through 2 of his chiefs of staff. Calls and texts were not returned. Arizona has 2 ways of funding education. First, there's the traditional route, funding school districts and charter schools. These schools are supposed to be open to everyone. The second is through empowerment scholarship accounts, or vouchers. These pay for private school tuition, homeschooling, therapy, or activities like supplies, like Legos. Over $1 million of Legos have been bought with vouchers. The voucher program was supposed to create a level playing field in education, so we looked at the records to find out who's winning and losing. Welcome to Paradise Valley, 85253. It's a community of some of Arizona's most rich and famous. A typical home, at least $3 million. The median household income, one of the highest in the state at over $182,000. That's more than double what a typical Arizona family makes, according to census data. Here, over 700 kids have an ESA. That's a voucher for 1 in almost every 10 homes. And this zip code is not unique. A 12 News investigation found Arizona's voucher program has primarily helped affluent families. Almost 62% of all vouchers go to homes making more than the median household income in Arizona. More than 1/3 go to homes making more than $100,000 a year. How the money is spent has very few regulations.
So if you're doing a baseball camp, you can call that curriculum.
Really?
And there's a form in the ESA Handbook that you fill out with your objectives and what you're going to do, and then you buy supplemental materials to support your study of that curriculum.
Kathy Boltz's son has special needs and has had an ESA since 2017. That's 5 years before universal vouchers went into effect. State records show special needs kids get the most money, up to $47,000 per child, while the typical ESA is between $7,000 to $8,000. In 2022, Governor Doug Ducey signed a massive expansion to ESAs. Now, anyone in Arizona, regardless of income or special needs, can get the voucher.
A program that genuinely met the needs of some special education students has been hijacked by special interests who have a really different end goal in mind.
Now the Republican-controlled legislature wants to take Arizona's education experiment a step further. Enshrine vouchers in the state constitution.
The ESA program, right, began small with children with disabilities, and it slowly expanded. There were military families. There were children who were in failing school districts. But you know what? Every kid has the right to educational choice. So everyone gets it, just like everyone gets the opportunity for public school or a charter school.
That's longtime state lawmaker John Kavanaugh. He writes the budget in the Senate. He's also one of the biggest ESA supporters at the Capitol.
Education is the responsibility of the state government. We will educate all children.
That commitment has come with a cost. Before universal vouchers, the program cost the state $176 million a year. Today, the program costs the state over $1 billion a year. State Schools Chief Tom Horn says that's just fine.
If somebody is in a private school or in a homeschool situation and they find out that there's money available, that they would take advantage of it, that's what I would expect.
And how do you counter the criticism that this is an entitlement for the wealthy?
We don't ask them for their income. And so you can have zip codes that have high average incomes. We have a list of 35, but here's a few examples. A $5,000 Rolex watch, I suspect that was probably for a parent. A $24,000 golf simulator, probably also for a parent. Believe it or not, a vasectomy testing kit.
Tom Horn is an unapologetic supporter of Arizona's voucher system, yet he tells the I-Team that the best way to protect it and to blunt critics of the program is to stop parents from misusing tax dollars. That means rejecting some ESA reimbursement requests, like these charges for $64,000 in nail art and crystals.
Succeeded to some extent until we caught it and put a stop to it.
Parents, however, have dug in, trying to get the money through a judge. That's when they face Maria Sims, a former Republican lawmaker and attorney for the Department of Education. She said she's won all 8 appeals so far.
By publicizing it, we're alerting parents that this is not going to fly, that you're not going to be able to get your golf simulator or your cello or whatever extravagant item you want.
12 News examined some of those cases through a public records request. One shows that in February 2024, a family requested a roughly $16,000 ESA reimbursement for a full-size cello. We found that family in an upscale Gilbert neighborhood. Well, we were just trying to see why you try to get a $16,000 cello reimbursed.
If you're looking at the luxury one, this costs like $500K, right? $300K. Ours is $16K. There are like less cheaper, like $2K, even $500 cello out there in the market, but that will not help our son at all. It will even damage or destroy his musical talent. Yeah. And the $16,000 is kind of in the low range, actually.
Horn said this family had already received ESA funds for a piano, a commercial KitchenAid mixer, private fitness lessons, a kayak, and Chinese calligraphy painting lessons.
And they don't have any guideline beforehand. We already made the payment, and then they come back and ask us so many questions.
And after getting funds for all of this, the family put their child back into a public school.
we will support our kids' education.
After all those purchases were allowed, the cello finally was rejected because Horn's office placed a new $4,000 limit for musical instruments.
We look at fraudulent cases, and we don't just roll over and pay them, that we push back.
The Department of Education provided this video showing their 12-member staff. This team is responsible for reviewing about 2 million requests for reimbursement every year, accounting for hundreds of millions of dollars.
So we're badly understaffed. They're working very hard. I'm very proud of our administrator. They're operating efficiently, but it's a big burden.
Still, records show this team rejected $35 million in claims this school year. Governor Katie Hobbs, a Democrat and outspoken critic of vouchers, said the Republican schools chief is doing the best he can.
I think you've seen the superintendent kind of just throw up his hands over the lack of ability to administer because there's not funding to do so, and the program has grown so much.
We also asked the governor about the cello.
It's taxpayer money. It is taxpayer money, and taxpayers deserve accountability. They deserve reasonable guardrails that ensure that these funds are being spent on education, because these are funds that are being pulled out of their local public schools.
I'm Kimberly Yee, and today I am announcing that I am a candidate for State Superintendent of Public Instruction.
With conservative lawmaker Jake Hoffman by her side, Yee on Wednesday said she wants a new job. Hoffman has battled Horn over the ESA program that now costs taxpayers more than $1 billion a year, and Hoffman recruited Yee. She was the top vote getter for all contested races in 2022. They said Horn should stop interfering on what parents want to buy with their ESA tax dollars. Do you support any limits at all? Do you think parents should be able to get a cello or a Rolex watch?
I believe in school choice and an educational free marketplace. And if you take a look at the examples that you choose to use, that's 1/100% of total receipts that are coming in to the ESA program statewide.
But it's not clear how the $1 billion is truly being spent, because the Treasurer's Office refuses to release the records.
We do not have control over those records. The third-party vendor does. So if you do want to contact the third-party vendor, they would have access to those records.
The third-party vendor, Class Wallet, contracts with Yee's office to pay the Empowerment Scholarship accounts. Parents submit reimbursement requests to Horn's office, but Yee's office directs Class Wallet to pay. But you have access to them as the public official.
You're asking for information, Craig, that we do not have.
So we called Class Wallet, which is based in Florida. Craig Harris with 12 News in Phoenix, Arizona. But we shouldn't have to. Class Wallet shows customers, like the Arizona Treasurer's Office, how to get the exact information we asked for.
In order to pull reports, go to your Class Wallet dashboard and either go to the hamburger in the upper left and look for Reports in the drop-down, or you can go to the Reports tile on your homepage.
Yee's office should be able to simply download the documents, which are public records. Horn, meanwhile, was shocked that Yee was running against him in next year's Republican primary.
I always knew Jake Hoffman was a wild extremist. I never thought of her that way.
Horn said he's cracking down on fraud and waste in the popular voucher program that now has about 90,000 kids. While it grows each year, it represents less than 10% of all students in Arizona. And Horn's team has been rejecting expenses they don't believe should be eligible.
And she's adopted this philosophy, this weird philosophy that Jake has been promoting, that I should have to pay a $5,000 watch or a $24,000 golf simulator.
This upscale home looks like most others here in Queen Creek, but step inside. This 3,200 square foot home doubles as a micro school.
I've seen such a drastic difference in both my kids. My daughter specifically told me she wants to cancel summer because she would rather be here.
Meet Ariel Derrick. The Santan Valley mom has 2 kids in this micro school, Adamo, funded by Arizona's Empowerment Scholarship accounts.
The teachers care about the kids, and they make sure each one of them feels special.
Microschools are a twist on homeschooling. Instead of mom or dad teaching the kids, parents group their kids in a home with dedicated teachers. Until 3 years ago, microschools were primarily part of a charter school system. There was oversight from the state charter board and charter school administrators. When universal vouchers came into play, microschools qualify as private schools, operating with no state regulation. That's a problem, according to Beth Lewis, a teacher who runs Save Our Schools Arizona.
I think most Arizona voters, Arizona taxpayers say, if I'm giving you my money, I want to know what's going on in that school and how my dollars are being used, at least at a certain level.
As private companies, microschools like Adamo rely on ESA money.
The ESA program has been a huge benefit to many families. And in this scenario, the tuition covers the majority of what the ESA families get. I don't charge parents anything extra. If they can't cover it, I'll scholarship them.
Tamara Becker has spent 28 years in education, including running an online school. She opened Adamo in her home in 2021.
Adamo comes from the Latin word to fall in love with, and I wanted kids to enjoy what they're doing and love it here.
Adamo was partnered with a charter school. Becker said she transitioned to a full ESA program in February. She charges $6,800 a year for most kids. That's just under the amount for a typical universal voucher per student.
We had to ask all of our families to go ESA, and all but 2 families did.
She has 52 kids between kindergarten and 8th grade, one group in the morning, another in the afternoon. There are desks, cubbies, instructions on a whiteboard, and for the big kids, there's a comfy couch to watch a lesson on space and some homework.
We don't do anything really differently than a traditional school would do. We're teaching reading, writing, math, science, and social studies. 3 times a year, we do a benchmark assessment.
Those assessments are only for the parents. Private schools do not have to report to the state. Becker adds she has certified teachers and pays market rate. She adds school choice keeps her in business.
Parents vote with their feet in this state, and I'm so lucky to be a part of that. But yeah, if parents were not happy or satisfied with the education, if the students weren't happy or satisfied, they'd just walk out the door.
That's right. State schools officials got a stunning message on Wednesday. They may not get their June payment on time. That's because the legislature and governor haven't passed a budget, and state schools chief Tom Horn's office is out of money. School officials across the state on Thursday were scrambling for answers after receiving this letter, saying there's a $206 million shortfall for the budget that ends June 30th. Why are districts being told now? Why weren't they told earlier to maybe plan for this?
Well, I think the expectation was that the budget would have been agreed to.
The money crunch shouldn't affect most teachers who were already paid. Administrators could face a financial crunch.
Could present problems for being able to make payroll and pay bills, or cause districts to have to borrow money.
That's Paul Ty, Executive Director of Arizona School Administrators. He believes there's a big culprit for the shortfall.
The ESA voucher program has expanded dramatically this year, and there's no cap on those expenses.
The ESA program is projected to cost $1 billion next school year. Horn's office says there was a lawsuit settlement for Maricopa County schools and more students to fund than expected. At least 1/4 of the problem, or $52 million, was for empowerment scholarships. The I-Team previously uncovered how some of the most wealthy neighborhoods in Arizona are getting large numbers of vouchers. A typical voucher is between $7,000 and $8,000, but they can be in excess of $40,000 for special ed kids. There's some of the critics from the ESAs are saying, well, look at once again, ESAs have caused a significant problem to the state budget for the majority of the kids.
Well, my position is it's not, because the average ESA is about $7,500.
Horn went on to defend the empowerment scholarships and said they were not the driving factor of the shortfall, though he's recently cracked down on lavish spending. Key budget writer and State Senator John Kavanaugh was not available for an on-camera interview. He downplayed the shortfall in a phone interview with 12 News. He said, "It may be an overstatement. We are still negotiating the budget, but everyone will get paid. Lawmakers are still on a recess and have to June 30th to pass a budget." I'm Craig Harris, 12 News. Most anyone who's lived in Arizona knows about Colorado City. It's one of the most beautiful parts of the state, but it has had a checkered past. Now the community has become ground zero for vouchers. Colorado City is nestled on the Arizona Strip with neighboring Utah to the north. The small town is known for its connection to Mormon fundamentalists. Yet there is now a much different issue facing this community. It's Arizona's education experiment, vouchers.
We only have 600 students currently in our district, and we have 2 schools. We lost about 40 in our high school last year, and we lost another 40 to 50 in our elementary this year.
Meet Carol Timpson. She's the superintendent of the Colorado City Unified School District. While her district lost close to 100 kids to ESAs, that's a fraction of the total amount using vouchers. The 12 News I-Team found Colorado City, in zip code 86021, has one of the highest percentages, nearly 61%, of homes in Arizona that get empowerment scholarships. The I-Team found there were 476 students out of 783 homes using vouchers. That's more than 1 out of every 2 homes. A typical voucher is between $7,000 and $8,000. It can exceed $40,000 for special needs kids. That translates into more than $3 million in tax dollars going to Colorado City for private or homeschooling vouchers. One of the biggest winners is ESA Academy. 3 brothers who were teachers in Colorado City Unified Schools started the private school in fall 2022. That's just after then-Governor Doug Ducey signed into law the state's universal voucher program, giving everyone, regardless of income, a voucher.
We wanted the rigor of the public system with the safety of morality that a homeschool brings, and we make those worlds come together. This ESA program has been a godsend for that. None of these parents would be able to have that. We wouldn't even have created this school were it not for that program.
That's Alex Barlow and his brother Charles. The other sibling is Cephas. They opened ESA Academy with 17 kids 3 years ago. This past school year, it had 117 from 1st through 10th grade. The brothers are certified teachers and all teach here. They said they use the same state testing standards as the school district, and they offer unique classes like sewing, construction, and Bible.
It kind of goes in tandem with the culture of everyone that we are teaching around this area, but it also is kind of going back to a traditional style of teaching, whereas back in, it seems like around the 50s era, you could say that God is this and that in school system and no one would bat an eye.
They say tuition is about the same as a typical ESA scholarship. Public records obtained by 12 News show ESA payments to ESA Academy have gone from about $106,000 a year to over $820,000. Timpson, the school superintendent, said Colorado City schools this past year lost over $900,000 because students left for vouchers. However, she expects many will come back because of the programs her schools have to offer.
I know I'm going to get a significant return to school at some point, and I'm trying to gear up. When we had students coming in from the homeschool before, that's what mother after mother after mother said. I just had to put them back in school because I couldn't get them to do their work. It's really nice to have outside people to help you with that.
The superintendent also told me that if more students leave because of vouchers, she will have to revert to layoffs and consolidate all the kids into one building. I'm Craig Harris, 12 News. Arizona lawmakers have been on a recess for about a month because they couldn't agree to a budget. Well, now they are back, but there's still a problem. They still can't agree on how to spend over $17 billion. But this time, the problem isn't between the Republicans, who control the legislature, and Democrat Governor Katie Hobbs. It's a battle between Republicans and Republicans. They say politics makes strange bedfellows. When it comes to the annual state budget that begins July 1st, it's strange indeed. Democrat Governor Katie Hobbs, Democrats in the legislature, and Republicans who control the Senate say they are close to a deal. But in the House, also controlled by Republicans, they have their own plan.
We are focused on public safety. We have DPS raises, correction officer raises. We're focused on transportation, almost $100 million of new transportation, including I-10 and State Highway 347, and a whole bunch of little fixes too.
That's State Representative David Livingston, the key budget writer in the House. The House Republican plan also slightly cuts tuition at public universities and imposes a 3-year tuition freeze. Governor Katie Hobbs said that plan is dead on arrival, claiming it cuts public education and increases taxes on hospitals. Her office declined to comment for this story. However, the governor has an unlikely ally. It's State Senator John Kavanaugh, the chief budget writer in the Senate.
This year, the Republicans in the House did not want to align with us. They've come out with a budget that has no gubernatorial input, which the governor has seen and has said this is dead in the water.
Kavanaugh said their plan also includes raises for state troopers, but it differs in how $270 million in surplus dollars are used. It would give the governor $90 million in discretionary spending and $90 million each to Republicans in the House and the Senate. The two budgets agree on one thing: there will be no changes to Arizona's rapidly growing empowerment scholarships. The 12 News I-Team has uncovered that vouchers will cost the state $1 billion this upcoming school year for less than 1/10 of all school-age kids. Vouchers have primarily helped wealthy families and hurt high-performing school districts, 12 News found. Kavanaugh said Hobbs wanted to implement an income cap on who could get vouchers. Republicans said no way. But Senate Republicans gave Hobbs an olive branch. They would lift a spending cap for public school districts, something that's not in the House budget.
I think we all agreed on certain funding increases for schools in terms of construction, in terms of the general aid that all schools get per pupil.
Both budget writers told 12 News they hope all sides can agree to a spending plan by the end of next week. That would mean Republican House leaders would have to start talking with the governor and members of their own party in the Senate. I'm Craig Harris, 12 News. Private music lessons, gymnastics, horseback riding, all fun activities for kids. Most families have to pay for out of their own paychecks, but not if your child has an Arizona Empowerment Scholarship. 12 News has exclusively obtained public records from the Arizona Department of Education, showing how nearly 20 million taxpayer dollars were spent on just 8 extracurricular activities for kids getting vouchers. That's nearly $7 million for private music lessons, including $1 million for piano lessons, $2.8 million on swimming lessons, and at least $1 million each on gymnastics, dance, fitness, horseback riding, and martial arts. We also found $2.8 million spent on math tutoring.
It absolutely bothers me, yes. It's unjust. It's not what our tax dollars are supposed to fund.
Democrat State Representative Nancy Gutierrez, a Tucson high school PE teacher, was appalled at our findings.
If we are spending that kind of money for private schools and people to just go and get their kids those dance and piano lessons and giving them state money to do that, that is all money that doesn't get to a private or a public school. And public schools, we know, serve the majority of our students in Arizona.
Gutierrez said ESAs had a personal effect on her. She was recently laid off because of declining enrollment in her Tucson school district. She is also among the negotiators for the state budget.
Why did you support a cap on vouchers?
Well, I think a cap is the least amount that we can do right now. I think if you're making over $200,000, even over $100,000, then if you choose to pay for or to have your child in private school, then you can afford that tuition. I do not think that we should be subsidizing rich people's tuition.
She said Governor Katie Hobbs, a fellow Democrat, tried to limit vouchers to families making $200,000 or less. That's more than double the median household income in Arizona. Republicans who control the House and Senate said no way.
We are protecting ESAs. We are not going to be reducing qualifications for it. So there'll be no change in ESAs.
That's Republican State Senator John Kavanaugh, the chamber's key budget writer. His GOP counterpart, Representative David Livingston, said ESAs are popular for parents who want more educational choice. That choice will cost the state more than $1 billion this upcoming school year. Livingston downplayed the I-Team's finding that millions of tax dollars were spent on ESA extracurricular activities.
We got some numbers from the Department of Education, and piano lessons have been over $1 million the last 3 years. The other reports came up before for Legos. Those seem kind of luxury items.
I think we've seen major fraud at a number of big school districts here. that tens of millions of dollars. So if you want to talk about piano hair or Lego hair, that's fine, but it's not the big stuff.
The Department of Education presented a new ESA Handbook to the State Board on Monday, outlining how parents can spend ESA dollars. A typical ESA voucher fully funded by tax dollars is $7,000 to $8,000 per kid. The amount can exceed $40,000 for kids with special needs. 12 News showed you how some parents were submitting claims for voucher payments for things like golf simulators, pianos, and a $16,000 cello. But Horn's office put a $4,000 cap on instruments. Now conservative GOP lawmakers pressured Horn to remove all spending caps. They got their way.
We have listened to parents. We have negotiated with legislators. We have made modifications. And the board adopted the handbook that we proposed by a vote of 8-1.
So would the cello have been approved?
So there have to be some limitations.
Horn said even without the written spending caps, parents need to use some discretion, and his office will use previous caps as guidelines. At the State House, Republicans vowed to make no changes to ESAs despite the rising cost to taxpayers. House Majority Leader Michael Carbone and 13 other Republican lawmakers sent a letter to the board on Monday against the handbook. Many parents also told the board they know how to educate their kids without any restrictions on spending. One of those parents was Lynn Fox Embry of Goodyear. She's adopted 3 kids, including 2 with special needs. All 3 use ESAs.
Families are afraid to use this handbook. They're afraid that they're going to end up having to pay funds back. And that's not what any of us want. We want to be good stewards of this money. We want to operate in good faith.
We told you how Arizona is on track to spend $1 billion on empowerment scholarships. Now, we've obtained public records that show thousands of ESA families aren't spending all that money. In fact, they've saved over $440 million. The data does not tell us who has all that money, but it does show some accounts are really hoarding cash. More than 10,000 accounts are sitting on at least $10,000. And nearly 200 people have more than $100,000 each. And 10 accounts, they've got more than $200,000 each, and that includes one account with more than $250,000. Governor Katie Hobbs, a Democrat, told 12 News this was not the purpose of ESAs.
This is yet another indicator of why we need common sense guardrails. I don't think any taxpayer, even taxpayers who support ESAs, and a lot of them do, would support this.
So, how did this happen? In 2022, former Governor Doug Ducey and the Republican-controlled legislature expanded ESAs to all families with no income caps. Today, a typical empowerment scholarship is $7,000 to $8,000 per year, but kids with disabilities receive over $40,000, and families don't have to spend all the money. Data 12 News obtained shows students with disabilities have the largest accounts, but students without disabilities have a combined $220 million in unspent taxpayer funds too. The amount of unused money increased by 23% from a year ago, about $80 million more. And the law allows families to spend these leftover dollars on college, something that frustrates Democrats like State Representative Nancy Gutierrez.
That's unfair. This voucher money is supposed to be used for the student that year. That's not happening. And it's just infuriating.
She added ESAs, which will total $1 billion in spending this school year, could bankrupt the state.
It's an unsustainable model. It is ludicrous, and it is just, it is unjust.
State law says a student can use ESA funding for any community college, Arizona State School, or any private college. State Schools Chief Tom Horn declined to comment on the $440 million in unused funds. His office directed 12 News to GOP lawmakers, including Representative Nick Cupper. Republicans have refused to make any changes to the ESA program and declined our interview request. Cupper said in a statement, "If there is around $440 million sitting in the accounts of the 85,000 students using ESAs, I would say it sounds like a popular program." Cupper added public schools also are sitting on unused funds and considered clawing that back. He added, "Perhaps we should take a look at correcting that." The ITM uncovered this week that $444 million was left over in Arizona Empowerment Scholarship accounts at the end of the school year. That's 10,000 accounts with more than $10,000 each, nearly 200 accounts with more than $100,000 each, and 10 accounts with more than $200,000.
I have $3.50 in my son's account right now.
Simone Bell, an ESA parent who lives outside Show Low, couldn't believe what we found.
We're waiting for funding eagerly so we can start back up. I mean, some of the numbers are crazy to me, like $250,000 rolled over. How do you have $250,000? I have $3. How do you do it? I'm wondering are they not using it?
Bell added the ESA program provides about $40,000 per year for her son who has a disability.
So I'm grateful that they give me the option for my son to step over his shadow, and we've come a long way. So we're definitely using it for him to learn.
But students with disabilities had access to ESAs well before the Arizona legislature expanded the program to what it is today. In 2022, ESAs were open to any family, regardless of income or disabilities, and it exploded. It's projected to cost $1 billion this upcoming school year. But not all the money is being spent, and nearly $50 million was in inactive accounts, meaning the accounts were not renewed or even touched for at least 1 year.
Once a child is no longer an ESA participant, the money is supposed to revert back to the state.
Dave Wells is the research director of the watchdog group Grand Canyon Institute and has been keeping track of ESA funds for several years.
And to have that kind of money be really dormant and not being utilized is really costing kids in the state.
State law allows that unused money to sit for 3 years. Then the Department of Education is required to begin the process to take it back. But the department told 12 News this has never been done.
Yeah, if it's not being used, if there's nobody active, let's use it.
State Schools Chief Tom Horn declined an on-camera interview when we asked why they haven't gone after the money. But after breaking this story, his office blamed the governor, saying in a statement, ADE is reviewing those funds. ESA staff is limited, and the governor opposed our request for more personnel in the latest state budget. We have to balance tasks like that with our day-to-day work serving ESA parents. The recently approved budget was a bipartisan deal with the Republican-controlled legislature. Still, Horn's right about the staffing. We previously revealed that the ESA office has just 12 employees, responsible for about 2 million ESA spending requests a year from parents, including weeding out any possible fraud. Horn says they haven't gotten to the money left in dormant accounts, but our analysis found it's only 12,000 inactive accounts that hold the $49 million. That's 900 accounts with nearly half of the total pot. $22 million, and just 18 inactive accounts totaled almost $2.5 million. The largest inactive account had over $240,000. Welcome to Globe High School, a place with a very deep, rich history. In fact, the first graduating class, 1910. It's also the home of former Governor Rose Mofford. And if you walk down these halls, you're going to go to the home economics class of Mrs. Wagner, but you're still going to take a step back in time. When school starts here in late July, Londa Wagner will have about 100 kids a day. It's in a classroom with kitchen sinks that don't work. The cabinets, possibly 60 years old, were built by a former shop teacher. The measuring cups, hand-me-downs the past 4 decades.
It was a time capsule.
Believe it or not, it was even worse when Wagner started here in 2018.
We found things from the 90s, and the stoves were from the 60s, and only one burner worked. And we have slowly improved.
Wagner has a deep connection to the school. Her grandmother attended classes here. Her mom graduated in 1959. She graduated in 1994, and all 4 of her kids went to school here. Today, the stoves work, there's a new ventilation system, and 8 new KitchenAid mixers, but none were paid for with tax dollars. Okay, how much money did you have to raise for the KitchenAids?
Couple $1,000.
Okay. It's a stark contrast to the tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars that bought more than 200 KitchenAid products for private homes.
I'll admit we bought a KitchenAid stand mixer and attachments, which some people would consider a luxury item, but I'm a chef by trade. I believe in the tools you use is what you get.
Simone Bell is a parent with a disabled child who gets money from the Empowerment Scholarship account, or ESAs. It's taxpayer money that goes to parents who homeschool or send their kids to private schools. And the I-Team found that since the Arizona legislature expanded the program to everyone, regardless of income or ability, parents spent more than $38,000 on just over 200 KitchenAid products. That includes 66 mixers that cost $300 to $800 each.
So if you buy a cheap tool, you're going to get a terrible outcome.
12 News found that ESA parents collaborate online on how to get those purchases approved by the Department of Education. That agency and the Treasurer's Office have dual oversight of an ESA program that has skyrocketed to cost $1 billion a year for over 85,000 kids. But in the public school system in Globe, there's no taxpayer funding for the same supplies. I showed Londa Wagner the public records of ESA spending. These are all just KitchenAid products that were bought.
Wow. And knowing how hard we worked to raise the money for these Proline, this stays with individual families, and these are used by hundreds of students.
How does that make you feel?
It's very upsetting, and that's why I was motivated to speak. We should have had funding for our rural schools.
In June, she drove from Globe to the Capitol for a State Board of Education meeting.
We didn't have the luxury of funding.
But Wagner was outnumbered. ESA parents and conservative Republican lawmakers urged the state board to have no ESA spending restrictions, and the board approved a new handbook that has no hard spending caps. It's unclear what the limit is for high-end KitchenAid mixers. Wagner said her kids will have to keep fundraising to keep her cooks in the kitchen. So how much money do you think you've raised since you've taken this job?
Probably close to $20,000.
Really?
Our children need basic equipment, basic items for their classrooms.
Reporting from Globe High School, I'm Craig Harris, 12 News.
I don't believe in wasting money either. I got a couple of science projects and then my base curriculum. And that left me with a lot of money.
Can you tell us how much?
Over 20,000.
Okay, and you're going to give that back?
Yeah, it'll go back.
It'll go
back into the system.
The I-Team revealed state records showing $444 million in unspent ESA funds, including nearly $50 million in dormant or inactive accounts. State law allows parents to save their ESA dollars for college, and the I-Team found some families already are doing that. Public Records 12 News obtained from the Department of Education show nearly $700,000 in ESA funds was spent on college expenses the past 3 years, when the ESA program expanded. Over 80% of the college spending occurred last year. The largest sum, over $137,000, went to Grand Canyon University last year. Five-figure sums went to several Arizona community colleges the past 3 years. Kim Fisher said she thought about doing that.
I know that's the big controversy right now, which I really don't get why there's a controversy. Those are his education dollars.
Fisher noted that students in Deer Valley and other district and charter schools can earn college credits while in high school. But State Senator Lauren Kuby pointed out some families are holding on to more than enough money to cover the entire cost of in-state tuition.
Obviously, it was written in the law, or as a loophole of the law, that people didn't see what the ramifications would be.
The I-Team found 10,000 families had over $10,000 left over, and 200 families had more than $100,000 unspent by the end of the last school year.
But I think people's reaction is outrage. Why do we want to take away the revenue that we need for public education to favor the wealthy few?
Kuby, a Democrat from Tempe, has tried to rein in the program, which allows unused money to sit for up to 3 years. She sponsored one bill that would claw back unused money after 1 year, and another would prohibit spending leftover funds on college. She said neither was given a hearing.
I think it's time to really take a hard look at this.
The recently approved state budget includes no changes to Arizona's ESA program, expanded in 2022. It now allows any Arizona student to qualify with no income caps. Now it's expected to cost $1 billion this year for about 90,000 kids.
You know, I have heard from the legislative majority that this is a sacred cow.
Freshman Representative Nick Cupper, who served 20 years in the Air Force, said GOP lawmakers are united in their support of school choice. He said they were given a mandate last year when they expanded their majority in the legislature.
I think it's pretty obvious that the people of Arizona in general want ESAs.
Why are ESAs important to you?
ESAs are important because it opens up the opportunity for people who couldn't otherwise maybe afford to homeschool their child or private school their child, do whatever is the right thing for their particular child.
Cupper said ESAs have helped his 4 kids, including a special needs daughter who was adopted. He said he could support some minor changes like making sure ESA dollars only are used for Arizona colleges. Now the law is unclear if ESA funds can be used for private universities outside of Arizona. He also said he may support clawing back unused ESA dollars after 2 years.
Babysitting, it's not in the law, and it's not in the ESA Handbook.
Longtime ESA parent Kathy Boltz is surprised to learn the latest revelation how private voucher money is allegedly spent. Boltz says the program has been a lifeline for her son with autism, and she wants to see stricter accountability.
Previously, there were questions about if the grandparent or the aunt or uncle could be paid, but that all seems to have become acceptable and without question. Siblings too, apparently.
12 News is in a legal dispute with the Arizona Department of Ed and Treasurer's Office in an effort to get a full accounting of how hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars are being spent in the ESA program. The Department of Ed has provided more records than the Treasurer's Office, but there are still big unknowns about where all the money's going. And records provided by the Treasurer's Office look like this. That large black box is covering up vendors who were getting paid over the course of a year. 12 News is asking for transparency from both agencies. On Friday, an attorney representing Treasurer Kimberly Yee said vendor names should remain private. One reason, quote, to protect identities of minor children who provided services that would have categorized them as a vendor, like tutoring and babysitting services. That response reveals how minors and family members can be paid as vendors.
You know, if I wanted to hire a 17-year-old to tutor my 15-year-old, say, I could do that. Should that money come from the state? Absolutely not.
Arizona House Minority Leader Nancy Gutierrez is an outspoken critic of universal ESAs.
Who's deciding if that minor is qualified to provide this service? No one.
The ESA Handbook only requires that tutors have a high school or homeschool diploma, and parents decide what it takes to get a homeschool diploma. The Department of Ed also confirms there's no age requirement to be a vendor, including a tutor. The ESA Handbook previously banned paying siblings. Now it does not. The law says nothing for or against about babysitting services, though the Department of Ed says they don't believe it's allowed. So how much are kids getting paid as tutors or babysitters? A spokesperson for the Department of Ed says they don't believe it's possible to answer the question because they don't track the age of vendors. Yee and her attorneys did not respond to our requests for more details. Yee says she's not required by law to provide those details. In a letter Friday, her attorney writing, the treasurer does not have financial oversight or any other statutory, administrative, or audit authority over the ESA program. They argue those duties belong to the Department of Ed. The law names both agencies, saying the Department of Ed and the state treasurer shall administer the fund.
We've seen fraud, we've seen abuse, but for our state treasurer to say that she's not obligated to really do due diligence in how these funds are spent, I find that baffling.
Kimberly Yee has announced she is running to be the next school superintendent, challenging her fellow Republican Tom Horn. Joe Dana, 12 News.
State Treasurer Kimberly Yee walked back her claims that empowerment scholarship dollars or tax dollars were being used to pay babysitters. We tried to ask her about that, and this is what happened. We were just hoping to grab Treasurer Yee and ask her a couple questions beforehand. State Treasurer Kimberly Yee has told 12 News for months that she does not have records showing how parents are spending ESA funds, though her office released these records in the past. Earlier this week, 12 News reported that an attorney for Yee said some of the taxpayer money is being paid to teenagers who tutor or babysit. Now, her attorney is walking part of that back. As we waited to speak with Yee on Thursday, one of her deputies handed me this letter, saying the claim that ESA funds paid babysitters was a mistake. But when we asked Yee about this... Hey, Treasurer Yee, do you have a minute to answer a question on why you walked back the issue of ESA dollars being used for babysitting?
Great. This meeting is called to order. Thank you, everyone, for...
She ignored us completely. Her office still has not agreed to give us the records, and Joe Canfield, her attorney who wrote the letter, did not respond for comment. Yee announced earlier this year that she plans to run for state superintendent of public instruction, challenging Republican Tom Horne in next year's primary. Horne's office has said all along that Yee's claims about babysitting were false. He said Thursday her about face shows she's unfit to run the Department of Education. And by making these claims of babysitting, why do you think she would do such a thing?
You know, it's hard for me to psychoanalyze craziness, but it's a crazy thought that we would use education funds to pay for babysitting.
Horne's office also has not provided the records showing the receipts for reimbursements despite repeated requests. Meanwhile, Democrat State Rep Nancy Gutierrez, an outspoken critic of ESAs,
I absolutely am not satisfied with the answer that you all were able to receive.
Said if neither Horne nor Yee's offices release the records, there's no way to determine who's telling the truth.
When a program has almost no oversight, that is not a good enough answer for me. My request is that the state treasurer, who is also running to be the superintendent of public instruction, release these records in their full form.
I'm Craig Harris, 12 News. When taking a trip to San Diego, think SeaWorld. It's home to one of the largest roller coasters in all of Southern California. But if that's not your speed, check out the world-renowned San Diego Zoo. Both can be pretty expensive, unless of course you have ESA dollars to spare. Then Arizona taxpayers pick up the tab.
If you are going to, I know a lot of people go to San Diego, the San Diego Zoo is covered, and that is an excellent learning experience. So ESA, really, the potential is endless.
That's a member of the nonprofit group Love Your School. Jenny Clark, a former State Board of Education member, runs it. She's a homeschool mom and nationally recognized school voucher advocate. She took her story to Congress earlier this year.
This changed everything for my boys.
Her nonprofit organization recently had an online webinar for ESA parents that 12 News joined. In part, it was to talk about how to use state dollars in ESA accounts to subsidize your vacation while complying with the program's one basic rule. Every dollar must be spent for education.
So if you are going down to Mexico, you can find something educational down there, and a tour that you're taking down there, you can get reimbursed for that with the proper paperwork.
We showed these clips to State Representative Nancy Gutierrez, an outspoken critic of the ESA program.
ESAs is up to $1 billion a year of tax money going so that families can go on vacation to San Diego.
Clark did not respond to our repeated requests for comment. Her nonprofit organization, which pays her just over $100,000 a year, isn't alone in helping parents use tax dollars to supplement their lifestyle. This is a Facebook group for Arizona Empowerment Scholarship accounts. This parent notes that the Arizona Department of Education approved SeaWorld tickets. Another asked to help write class curriculum to get those SeaWorld and zoo tickets covered. A single-day ticket for an older kid is $76, and the price drops to $66 if you're under 12. Parents gladly provide advice. One noted, you can get reimbursed for educational tickets anywhere. Another parent wrote, location doesn't matter. You could go abroad and have educational experiences reimbursed as well. Not limited to one day.
Is that an appropriate use of ESA funds?
If a student was going to a zoo and submitted a curriculum when they submitted reimbursement for the zoo, that would be an allowable expense.
That's ESA Director John Ward. We asked him about parents using their funds on vacation.
That's the beauty of ESA. It gives families who couldn't typically afford to go to the San Diego Zoo the opportunity to do that.
If you're taking a vacation in San Diego and going to the zoo, that's kind of an expensive trip.
State law allows that type of expenditure, and so we will continue to approve them.
Spending guidelines for ESA parents are in a state handbook. It allows zoo tickets, but prohibits overnight accommodations and food. Tyler Carter, SeaWorld San Diego Park president, said all aspects of his park are educational.
Completely educational, and everything we do, whether it's seeing our animals, meeting our educators, riding a roller coaster, everything has the educational component of the importance of protecting our oceans, protecting wildlife, and what we can do for conservation.
Carter also recommended families go online to find bargains. However, regardless of the cost, most tickets to San Diego attractions are likely to get approved. That's because the Department of Education implemented a policy in December because of a backlog of ESA spending requests. Since then, all expenses under $2,000 are approved automatically without any review, with the plan to audit later. Critics like Gutierrez said that can be exploited.
You could pay for a $2,000 Amazon gift card or a $1,999 Amazon gift card, use it for whatever you want to, and it's approved. School districts are fighting for every single dime they can get, and these families get $2,000 a pop. It is outrageously inequitable.
Gutierrez says she's proof the ESA's ballooning spending is hurting public schools. She says she's not going back to her teaching job in Tucson because of declining enrollment and inadequate funding.
We are cutting programs every single budget year, and yet people are going on our dime to the San Diego Zoo.
$2,000 was still going to be reviewed prospectively by the ESA staff. Everything at $2,000 and below would be reviewed on a risk basis.
That's State ESA Director John Ward. He told a legislative panel on July 21st there were just 12 staffers to review tens of thousands of ESA reimbursement requests. He said they don't have the resources to check everything. 12 News found the blank check is massive. In the last 8 months, the Department of Education has automatically approved 1.2 million ESA reimbursement requests for a total of $124 million. You heard that right, over $124 million with no oversight. We asked the Department of Education for the receipts, and they gave us a snapshot of a handful of approvals by the department. And even though there's not many details, it's very telling. We found several Amazon, Target, and Costco purchases with no explanation of what was bought, and a couple of fun passes that could be used for D-backs games. Over $160 to an upscale gym, $300 to Dick's Sporting Goods, $1,300 to a club dance studio, even large packs of sparkling water, paid for with education dollars.
The ESA voucher expansion is a scam. Let's call it what it is. It's a scam.
Our findings infuriated State Senator Lauren Kuby, who has tried unsuccessfully to rein in ESAs.
It's not being audited correctly. There's no transparency. There's no accountability. This is a program that we need to look at deeply, and our legislature is capable of holding to account this program.
State Schools Chief Tom Horn has said his small staff still rejected $35 million in improper ESA claims this past school year. He's asked for more funding to increase oversight of the roughly 90,000 kids in the program, but the Republican-controlled legislature and Democrat Governor Katie Hobbs did not fund 12 more positions in the last budget. Ward, the ESA director, recently told lawmakers the priority is to get money to parents, regardless of what it's paying for.
Our main responsibility is to get students who want to be on this program on the program. So that is our core mission. That's what we're focused on. It's very difficult with this very small staff to do much more than daily operations.
Ward told 12 News some of those reimbursements under $2,000 eventually will get examined.
They are auto-processed, but we are going back to audit them on a risk basis.
Ward also told lawmakers there's millions of dollars in expired ESA accounts that legally should be returned to the state.
What I do know, the one number I do have in my head right now is there's $12 million that we could sweep today. We just don't have the bandwidth at this point.
As school begins, this hallway looks like most others in schools across the valley, but this is a very special school for very special kids, thanks to Arizona's ESA program. Welcome to the Autism Academy for Education and Development. The school was founded in 2013 with just 22 kids. That was 2 years after Arizona became the first state to create taxpayer-funded empowerment scholarships for a child's private education. Back then, it was only for kids with special needs.
When we first opened, families did not have any idea that ESA existed.
That's Executive Director Shannon Mitchell.
What ESA did for the special needs community is to give them options for their students who have such diverse needs.
ESAs became available to all Arizona kids 3 years ago, and as they become more popular, so has the Autism Academy. Today, there are 850 kids from kindergarten to the age of 22 on 5 campuses and online. The very small classes and intensive instruction is expensive. Annual tuition for full-day in-person learning is $34,000 a year. ESA dollars fund nearly all, 99% of the students, according to Mitchell.
The Empowership scholarship really supports the family so that they can afford to go to a school that has the specialization that their student needs.
Along with academics, students learn music and life skills. They also play sports and have proms.
One of the reasons why we started is to really give our students a place to grow socially, academically, and behaviorally. And we really focus on those things.
You've really focused on the friend issue. Why is that so important for kids who have autism?
So autism is a social and communication disorder. So we really help walk them through with curriculum that's designed for social interactions and helping support them so they can make those long-lasting friendships.
ESA dollars have certainly helped families send their kids here. That's because those with special needs get the largest scholarships. State records show over 8,500 kids across Arizona receive at least $30,000 a year. Public records obtained by 12 News show the Autism Academy was the largest recipient, $26.5 million of ESA dollars last year for a private school. Mitchell said those dollars provide opportunities to all families with disabled children.
The school's not just for the elite, not just for families that have the means to get their kid the best education. So ESA gives kids, all kids, the opportunity. Doesn't matter what their socioeconomic status is, they can come to the best school for their child.
I'm Craig Harris, 12 News. If you want to see our other stories on the ESA program, go to 12news.com, or you can see other stories here on 12 Plus. I'm Craig Harris, 12 News.